AITA for inviting my nephew to my wedding despite his estrangement from my brother. I, 33 am marrying my fiancée, 37 this winter. We're putting together the guest list to send the invitations out and have run into an issue over my nephew and my brother. My brother, 38 was 18 when his girlfriend told him she was pregnant. They ended up moving in together and my brother decided to go to find work as a mechanic rather than go to college as he'd planned. My nephew was born a little while later. They got married when she told him she was pregnant with their second kid, 15F, and then had two more, both 10M. Ever since my nephew was born he's been literally one of my favorite people. I babysat him plenty of times, same with my other siblings, and have spent my 20s as their uncle. My brother and me were close as kids and I've been close with his kids as well. 5 years ago my brother found out my nephew wasn't his and his now ex-wife had been sleeping with someone else at the time and had suspected my oldest nephew wasn't my brother's since he was a little kid. They ended up getting a divorce and my brother didn't seek custody of my oldest nephew and said he didn't want to see him. He told me that he needed time to process and would try to patch things up later. That idea was kind of ruined when my nephew turned up at my brother's apartment begging to talk. It turned into an argument between them. For context, our father had just passed a couple of months earlier. During the argument my nephew said something along the lines of, "No wonder mom fucked somebody else. I bet grandpa hated you." My brother cut things off then and there and has refused to see my nephew since. I stepped in as the main male figure in my nephew's life, much as I dislike my ex-SAL. I even took him out for his 18th birthday and took him looking at universities and he now goes to my alma mater. I asked my brother how he wants to handle the seating situation if they don't want to be close together. My brother was angry I'd even invite my nephew after everything that happened. He said it'd be like inviting my ex-SAL, he's not family, he's just the prick who disrespected our dad. I said he's being petty and childish taking the words of a scared and angry 14-year-old so personally. He was a kid who said something shitty because his entire world was falling apart and a person he'd relied on for his whole life was suddenly pulling away, and instead of being understanding and doing family therapy or something like a grown-up my brother decided to give adult weight to a teenager's words and cut him off completely. My nephew has said he's okay with not going if it's causing an issue, but I told him not to be ridiculous, he's important to me and I want him there for when I marry my person. I told him he shouldn't let my brother's inability to let go be his problem. My fiancé agrees with me. My mom and sister both say I need to see it from my brother's perspective. I think he's just being petty. Relevant comments. Was it actually established that your nephew is not, in fact, your brother's child? Did your brother abandon him based only on suspicion? Not to say your brother isn't wrong, he absolutely is, I'm just curious because you never clarified in your post. I can't understand why your mom and sister would be siding with him if no DNA test was ever done. Your brother seems like a 100% triple grade A-hole though. Reply from OP. Yes. I'm pretty sure the whole thing started over a blood typing assignment thing for biology class, brother is O neg, ex-SIL is a neg, nephew is a POS. Comment. You're absolutely right to stand by your nephew and include him in your wedding. Your nephew is clearly an important part of your life, and you've stepped up to be there for him when his world fell apart. He needs that stability and love now more than ever, especially after being rejected by the person he thought was his father for most of his life. Your support likely means the world to him, and excluding him from your wedding to placate your brother's grudge would only add to the pain and rejection he's already experienced. Let's break this down. Teenagers say stupid things, your nephew was a kid going through an incredibly traumatic experience. Finding out that the man you believed to be your father for your entire life isn't actually your biological father would turn anyone's world upside down. Teenagers are known for saying things they don't mean when they're angry or scared. Your brother should recognize that and not hold a grudge over something said in a moment of heightened emotion and pain. Expecting adult-level maturity from a kid in that situation is unrealistic and unfair. Your brother's reaction, while it's understandable that your brother was hurt by the revelation and the subsequent argument, his reaction is extreme. It's been 5 years, and instead of finding a way to heal or move forward, he's holding on to anger and resentment. His refusal to even consider reconciliation, despite your nephew's attempts to reach out, speaks more to his own issues than to anything your nephew did. The grudge isn't just about what was said, it's about unresolved pain and betrayal. But that's something your brother should work through, ideally in therapy, rather than taking it out on a young man who's also hurting. Family dynamics, your brother's demand to exclude your nephew is trying to force you to choose sides. Weddings are about celebrating love and bringing people together, not about deepening family divides. Your brother has no right to dictate who you consider family and who you want to share your special day with. By excluding your nephew, you'd be reinforcing your brother's narrative that his grudge is more important than the relationships you've built and the love you have for your nephew. Your support matters. By standing by your nephew, you're showing him that he's not alone. This support could be pivotal in his healing process. It's also important for him to see that not everyone is willing to cast him aside based on circumstances beyond his control. Your brother's refusal to move past his anger is his issue to deal with, not yours. You're not responsible for managing his emotions or protecting him from his own unresolved feelings. By inviting your nephew, you're honoring the bond you have with him and making it clear that he matters to you. Your brother may need time to come to terms with that, but ultimately, his inability to let go shouldn't dictate your choices or your wedding day. Stick to your guns, and don't let anyone make you feel guilty for choosing love, understanding, and support over petty grudges. You're not being insensitive, you're being compassionate and kind. And that makes you far from an a-hole. Update. I decided to follow some of your advice and talk to him about what happened and set some boundaries with my brother, so I saw him in person to talk things over. I told him that my nephew has been in my life for more than half my life. I was 14 when he was born. I've been his uncle for 19 years and fundamentally he's not the one that betrayed my brother, and while I can't imagine what must have been going through my brother's head at the time, it's not my battle to fight, and even if it were, I'm not obligated to take it out on a kid who had nothing to do with it. What he said was extremely shitty, yeah, but we're talking about someone who was 14 at the time and absolutely did not have the emotional maturity to handle the situation. I told him my nephew was open to a mutual apology. So, bottom line, my nephew is invited and he's getting a +1, and I will seat him away from my brother if he wishes, but that's the most I will do. They can talk or not talk, kiss and make up or ignore each other all night, but I'm not making it my fight. My brother said he understood and would think about it, then a couple days later he drunk texted me a complete 180 and asked if I could invite XSIL, too, which I think is probably because his RSVP included his new girlfriend as his +1 and she's 26. I just know my niece complained it was gross that her dad's new girlfriend was a year closer to her age than his. My brother at his best is charming, confident, looks wise, kind of like a chunkier version of me, so not bad looking, and he had no trouble pulling women post-divorce once he got his confidence back and lost weight. I declined his drunk request, but his girlfriend is nice and I told my niece that GF is inside the half +7 so she can't be completely grossed out. Since some have asked about my nephew and ex-Sil, I'll explain. She didn't know for sure that my nephew wasn't my brother's, but she strongly suspected, and she was sleeping with both her AP and my brother at the time. For about a year after the divorce my nephew would throw the deception back in her face every time she reprimanded him, until I sat him down and pointed out that the more people he pushes away the fewer people he has in his corner when things go south. Bottom line, she is his mother. After the debacle with my nephew my brother and ex-Sil were more careful with my niece and the twins about not making adult problems their problems as well. Sorry there was no Scarlet A like many of you would have liked. She's not my favorite person but I can sort of tolerate her. To answer the question about his bio dad, my nephew has expressed zero desire to meet him. He says he doesn't get why people think a perfect stranger could replace my brother, like being abandoned out of the blue never happened. My nephew RSVP'd yes and is taking his they friend, his so is non-binary, and that's what they're calling themselves. So, finger crossed a happy ending.